Recording in.
Hello, hello. Coach Carmen here from the Happy Balanced Life. And today I am happy to introduce to you my guest, Wanda Santos. She is a certified trauma coach. She's also the vice president of community living at Waystone. And she's an author. Recently, she just had her first book published. And she is also the founder of Roses of Renewal. So, a lot of experience with us here today. And I'm excited to have this conversation with her. This month, we're talking about Financially Fit February. We are talking about all things finances. And while we love talking about how to make a budget, how to save money, and how to invest, it's really important that we talk about the background with financial trauma. And that's her expertise. So I'm excited to ask her some questions and have our guest here today with us. Wanda, welcome. And I would love for you to just introduce yourself to us and tell us who you are, anything that you feel comfortable sharing today.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so honored. Super blessed to be in your presence in general.
You're so sweet.
So a little bit about me, I think you kind of just covered everything. I work for a nonprofit agency locally as a VP of community living. So I support people with disabilities, brain injuries, etc. But I also am have newly founded Roses of Renewal, which is a community group which targets various types of trauma in terms of, different curated spaces. So I try to the best of my ability to create spaces in the community, workshops, storytelling events, and many other collaborative spaces where we can talk about specific traumas. So I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And I have to say, Wanda, since I met you, you have a constant stream of activity going on. Like there's always some post, there's always a new event, a workshop, a thing. And I love that. I love that you are working so hard in what you love, but also inspiring others along the way, right? So you don't realize how much the way that you show up and the things that you're sharing are really inspiring other women, right? And I'm assuming men as well. So talking about inspiration, what inspired you to start Roses of Renewal?
So I think that on a more personal level for me, it was more so the way that I grew up. I think that having to work at a very young age, at 12 years old, and really having a lot of financial responsibilities within our household, I think that made me look at money in a different way, in a way where I call it today disrespecting money, because I felt like I was just constantly producing at such a young age. So I was producing and I was spending at the same rate. So I wasn't really valuing money the way that I should, or the way that I do today. So that really, is one of the many reasons I wanted to create a platform where we can talk about financial trauma, because I really wished I had the guidance that I needed. And I knew, the value in saving and the value in looking at money in a way where I'm looking towards the future versus just in the moment. And I think that there were a lot of what I was experiencing at a very young age, being as independent as I was at a young age, was that I was not looking really at the future. I was just looking and living in the moment.
And that's so normal, right? I think more people live in that state that you just described about we make money, we spend money, right? We're living in the moment. We're not thinking of tomorrow. And I think that's the big difference between people who are well off financially and not, is that they plan, they save, they invest. They really look at money differently, right? They look at money like, what is this going to get me? How's it going to get me further? How can I make this $2, right? Instead of like, what can I buy now, right? Like, what can I buy right now? Like, and I think for me, I will say, we were not poor growing up. I would lie. I'd be lying if I said that. I don't have the whole story about like I walked uphill with no shoes in a snowstorm story, right? I don't. But what I can tell you, because a lot of our parents have that. But what I can tell you is that my my dad, especially, my parents were very hardworking, but my dad,
Mhm.
especially, you could not ask him for a quarter without him giving you a speech about all the bills that were due, right? And so
Yeah.
that made me think he was also a big saver. We had our own house, so I knew there was value in owning your own property. They taught me how to work hard, how to save, and how to own. That's the extent. So
Mm.
I can't really complain. But there was also this level of freedom when I went on my own that I did exactly what we said. I was finally making money. I was buying everything I wanted, and we become consumers really quickly, right? Like everything that I want. And oh, now I can go wherever I want to eat. And now I can do all the things that they told me I couldn't. So it becomes like this, unfortunately, it's like a snowball effect really fast, right? So, and then in college, all the credit cards they offer you and all the things that get you in trouble. And it was just a nightmare. But when I think about what you just described, that's most people. That is most people, I think,
Yeah.
unfortunately, which I think this is why this topic is important, because a lot of people don't even realize that they have financial trauma.
Hmm.
So, speaking about that, let's talk about the definition. So,
Okay.
financial trauma is defined as this emotional distress caused by chronic money related stress, lack of resources, or
Hmm.
financial abuse. And it can lead to feelings of anxiety, right?
Hmm.
It can lead to feelings of anger. It also leads for some of us to like feelings of not being enough. Like I
Hmm.
went to a private school and remember being like the poorest one there, right? All my friends were
Yeah.
doing stuff, they were involved in things, and my parents couldn't afford it. So I think that that could make you angry, or it could make you think like, when I'm older, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And so money becomes something that you're looking forward to and relying on, and then just overly spending, even when you have an abundance. So can you describe for me what your experience has been with financial trauma, either your experience or like what you deal with clients on a daily?
Yeah, I think I mean, I can answer that in various ways, but I would just say in general, the concept of financial trauma, in terms of the definition that you just described, is that we as humans try to work hard for money as opposed to money working hard for us, right? So we have this concept that the only way of producing any financial abundance is by hard work.
Mm,
And there's some truth in that, and there also is some of it that's actually false, because when you learn what money is, and you learn that it's really an energy, and you learn that money really can work for you, once you really know the dynamics of how to produce it, how to save it, how to multiply it, then your entire life can change thereafter. So I would say that with some of the clients that I'm working with currently and in the past, a lot of that financial trauma really is either underspending or overspending. So I've seen many situations where some of my clients are significant hoarders, and everything that they purchase, they hold on really tight to it. I mean, it could be a t-shirt. Let me just use that as an example, right? That they spend a good $40 on, and it's falling apart, and it's something that they really should let go of and get something new because it's not in the best condition, but because they spend their hard-earned money on it, and they have trauma that relates to letting go of things, or that relates to lack of not having enough in their
mhm.
childhood, then it becomes kind of debilitating for them to let go of that item, that article. And the t-shirt is not even significant in this case. It could be anything, you
Yeah.
know?
That's so
Um,
interesting. I'm glad you brought that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm glad
of
you brought
course.
up the underspending, because what I normally come across is overspending. Like
Yeah.
people, when I help people with budgets and finances, because I'm a financial coach as well, some folks will overspend, right? And so they're like, I don't, they're making really good money. And I'm like doing the math with them. And I'm like, well, you have this much money left over. You should
Yeah.
have this much money left over, right? Once you pay. And the reason they don't is because they just tap that card or like spend without thinking. There's no budget. There's the dollars are not assigned, right? But the underspending, I didn't really think about that too much. I haven't had a client with that issue yet. But the underspending, I can see that, because I can see like if you struggled, and you don't want to struggle
Mm,
again, you're going to hold on to your money. Or if you didn't have when you were growing up, I have met some hoarders, and you're right, they hold on to some things that are insignificant to us, but for them, they really feel like I need this. What if I don't have it tomorrow, right? I'm not going to be able to buy it again. And I
it's
actually know
gold.
someone, a good friend whose mom was a hoarder, and I remember having a conversation with her about it. And I think it's also, it's not cultural for her, wasn't cultural. It was more like, well, I guess it was the time frame she grew up in and the
Yeah.
struggles she went through, right? So
Mhm.
even something, Wanda, something like aluminum foil, she
I'm
would like,
telling you.
he would reuse it, right? Because she was afraid that she like wouldn't have to buy some for a long time because I'm just going to keep reusing what I have. So she was,
Correct.
and she was a hoarder. She kept everything, which was, really interesting. But what an interesting thing to talk about, not just overspending, but underspending and why people get into that headspace.
I think in general, yes, it's you have a lot of people that do a significant overspending. Absolutely. I mean, I lived it, so I know that. Um, and I do have a lot of people that I work with that do a lot of overspending, and they build upon credit cards, and they start building their debt, and then as they're building their debt, they take out a credit card to try to cover that debt, and then another credit card to cover that. So it just becomes like a pyramid of chaos, right?
Right.
Financial stress, and something that they usually can't come out of easily without professional help later on, because at that point you're just in over your head. But the underspending is something that's very common for a lot of the people that I work with, to be honest with you,
Mm,
because when you're working in a community where you have a fixed income
yes.
and you are either receiving benefits, living in housing, you have a disability, that when you have a disability, um just in general, there's a lot of expenses that go along with that, hospitalizations, I mean, you name it, regardless of what disability. There's medications perhaps sometimes that are not covered by your insurance. So
Oh,
with that comes debt. And if you're a single parent, especially, it even gets even more difficult. So it's very common in the field that I work in sometimes. And, you know, really showing people how to budget is important in that case, because although you're on a fixed income, there's ways to save, even if it's $2 a week, right?
yes.
And you set up a goal, and you have this goal to buy this thing for $100. There's a way of getting to that $100, maybe not overnight, but perhaps over a few months or a few weeks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, so you talked a little bit about it, but what are behaviors of financial trauma? Like, what are things that we might be looking for if we're talking to someone that we might be like, oh, something's going on here?
Yeah. So, I mean, it can look like many things. So, I should actually, say that a lot of marriages tend to have a lot of difficulty um, in terms of staying together because of finances. Okay. So a lot of the issues that you tend to see in terms of financial trauma can be anxiety, could be with being withdrawn from even having a conversation. There's people sometimes that they simply don't understand their finances.
Mm-hmm.
And although they know that they should look into what's going on in their own personal financial life at that moment, they avoid it.
Yes.
So it only becomes more difficult eventually in the future to really figure out what's going on, because they're just lacking the questions and the inquiries and the just really finding out what's going on. So that kind of a person could have 100 subscriptions that they're paying for. They have no idea that they're doing that, but they know that something's there, but they're not questioning it, right? So that's
Yeah.
putting them in further debt. um, just being withdrawn, anxiety, someone who perhaps is hoarding. Like I said, I'm going to use that because it's a common term that I use in the work that I do, but just
Mm-hmm.
hoarding their money in the bank, to the point where they physically, on the outside, on the exterior, look like they're they don't have money to buy basic things, but they really do. They're just really
Hmm.
scared to use it. Um, and then others, then you have the opposite, where people are very, part of their trauma could look like overspending. So it could be that they're just constantly on the physical, and
Yeah.
they look like they have an abundance of money, when in reality they're in debt. They are going from loans to loans. They have the best of
Mm.
the best and everything new, maybe a new car, and a new everything,
The
beautiful
latest
wardrobe,
phone, the latest sneakers. Yeah.
everything, but yet they're drowning, financially. So most of it physically would be, emotional, would be physical in terms of anxiety. A lot of
Mm.
people can't sleep at night, just thinking about their finances.
Yeah.
They're chasing their tail, writing their budgets down, and unfortunately, it hasn't been something that they can get out of. So it can be looked at and seen in many ways.
Yeah. So something that you said, two things that are important is you said earlier about marriages. So I have worked with a lot of women who unfortunately, and this is, whatever your decision is on how you pay bills and how you save money with your spouse or your partner is really up to you. But one thing that I think is critical and where a lot of these relationships fail is that they don't talk about things. So I literally had just last month a client who would not talk to her husband about their financial situation, like they're drowning. And he knows it and she knows it, but she says that he gets so angry and he's accusatory, so she doesn't want to deal with that. So there's a pressure there, right? Because they didn't build that habit. If you have an account together, you could both see it. But if you're
Yeah.
putting into the household and you both have separate money, you should still be talking about, what are we going to do next? How are we going to fix this? Or is it, do we have money for vacation? Can we pay this bill down? Whatever it is, those conversations should be happening. It's how you have a better relationship. And it says
Yeah.
more about your relationship than money, right? If you
Yeah.
can't have a simple conversation about your daily spending. And so what ends up happening is a lot of relationships break because usually there's a spender and a
Hmm.
saver, or somebody who's very analytical and writes all the bills and knows everything that's going on. Another person who's like, saving, buying. That's very normal in relationships. That's why the conversations have to happen. And
Hmm.
there's a reality. So what ends up happening is the spender never stops spending because they never get breaks, right? And the other person is just getting more and more upset, and eventually they break off because they feel like, I'm trying to build something and this person is just wasting money. And there's a lot of
Hmm.
divorces because, I mean, it is one of the top reasons for divorce is
Yes.
financial, which is really sad. The second thing I wanted to talk about that you mentioned is avoidance. So the avoidance that they do, whether they're overspending or underspending, is because they don't want to face their truth, right? They
Yes.
know that they might not remember all the subscriptions, right? But they definitely know that there's a problem. They
Hmm.
know they don't have enough money, or they know that they're overspending. They know they're overdoing it. But the longer I pretend it's not there, right? The longer it's not
Exactly.
there, I ignore it, the better I'll be. I don't have to face it. Because once you face the truth, you should have to do something about it. And people
Correct.
just are not ready. They're not ready to buckle down. It's kind of scary when I speak to different women when they're like, oh, I just don't want to do the budget because I don't want to see it. They know it, but they know once they write it down, it's like, hey, what's the action that I'm going to take? What am I going to do about this mess that I have here? Right.
Hmm.
And so it's eye opening because it's the trauma stays with you until you're able to accept that you want to do something about it. Correct.
Yes. And I will say that I'm very proud of people when they finally at least approach someone like me, or because there's many people, professionals out there that can help, right? It's
Yes.
the coaches, financial advisors. I mean, I can go on and on. There's just so many people that can be of help, and I'm just so proud when people finally reach out to someone, because
Yes.
once they do, that tells me that they're ready, even if it's slightly, to make a difference in their life, because money is probably one of the most difficult and challenging topics you can ever speak about,
Right.
and one of the most challenging things that you can ever honestly fully embrace, because
Hmm.
especially when you're in a partnership, because in that partnership you're two different people. You grew up differently, you have different needs, and you have different traumas, perhaps, or perhaps there's only one person that has carried over, trauma that's relating to money. um
Mm.
so merging those together becomes very challenging sometimes. And that is why when you say that, a lot of times it leads to divorce, it's very, very accurate. Um, what I do appreciate is when people can value each person's ways.
Yes,
There's no need to think that, let's say, my way is the better way than
that's
my
right.
spouse's way. I personally had, issues as well when my husband and I started dating in the very beginning, and we just saw money differently, and we had to do a lot of work together, and really understanding why is it that he is built the way that he is, and he sees money that way, and holds on to it, while I'm a little bit more free spirited and I like to work hard, but I also like to enjoy my money, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Not one way is better than the other, but it's how do you come together and find a way that's going to be beneficial for both of you so that you can be able to reach your goals without, being in debt, and also storing your money without really enjoying it.
Yeah, great point. And one other thing that I'll mention before we move to the next question about spouses, if they have children, the children
Mhm.
are watching, right? And sometimes I'm talking even about adult children who
Mhm.
they learn from their parents, right? When the parents never say no to them, they'd rather get in debt than buy them whatever they want. The kids grow up thinking that whatever I want, I'm going to have it. I just have to ask. Then they become like a partner to somebody who says no because they're more realistic, and that's where the problems start, right? Or the other is the financial trauma with kids that they see their parents spending and not understanding. Like they're like, oh, how come they have money for their things but not for ours? It's because
Correct.
their things are really our things. They're paying the rent, the water, groceries, taking us out to eat, whatever they're doing, but they don't have extra discretionary income for you to use on certain things, right? And so I also remember, families who their children want to be a part of a sport or a part of an event or something, and the parents can't afford it. Those are traumatic moments for children because they don't understand. Taking the time to explain money to your children, how it comes and how it goes, and how it's being prioritized is a blessing for them because they're
Hmm.
going to remember that. It's not just like all the time saying, we don't have money, we don't have money for that, we don't have money for that. Why don't we have money for that? You both work. What's going on, right? The
Hmm.
kids start getting confused. It's really about having conversations with your children, and they will learn from that. Like, listen,
Hmm.
when I have the money, we will be able to get ABC. But right now, the money that we're having is going to this. They're going to learn that they are making money, but it's being prioritized. When they grow up, they're going to prioritize their money too, right? By the
Yeah.
way, this weekend we have money left over, so we're going to be able to go, to the park or Canopy Lake or to the movies or whatever the child wants. But it's not saying yes all the time, but it's if you have to say no, it's about
I do.
explaining why the no is coming, right? I think I'll say it from my perspective as a Latina. I think Latin parents don't do a good job explaining because they feel like it's none of their business, their children, right?
Yes. Yes.
But unfortunately, that hurts the child because that child's going to be an adult. And guess what they learn? They learn not what you say, but what you do,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So then they start doing the same thing as mom and dad, whether it's hoarding or overspending. They just don't have any value to the dollar that they're making. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think we talked about couples, but let's talk about how that in fact impacts the entire family.
I think that that's so important what you just said, because you would be surprised how much children pick up on from
Mm-hmm.
a very, very young age to, even an adult child that's living in your household. I currently have, a partnership, a husband and wife who I'm working with currently. And, just in general, I'm trying to get them to where they need to, because there's significant trauma there that they're trying to overcome and really hone in. Um, but part of both of their journeys has been that growing up, they saw their parents constantly fighting about money. So money is a very sensitive
Yes.
subject for both, not just for one, um, because they just feel like they're always in crisis, and they always are have they have to constantly make money because there could be a time where they don't have it, because all they saw growing up was the lack and the fighting that's related to money.
Mm,
So money is not a positive thing. That's why when I do some of my workshops, I often ask people, what is your emotion attached to finances? Is it a
yeah.
happy thought? Is it a stressful thought? Is it a negative thought? because you would be surprised. Money is not a good thing for all people, you know?
Right, sure, sure. Comes with
Yeah,
trauma attached to it. I can understand that. So I'm
correct.
sure this conversation is resonating with a lot of people, Wanda. For those listeners, what advice would you give them? If you had to give them one piece of advice about financial trauma, what would it be?
I would say that it's never too late to rewrite your life.
I love
It's
that, your
never
story.
too,
Yeah,
yeah, it's never too late to just do things different in your life. And by that I mean look at why you do what you do, why you have the behaviors that you do that are associated to money, and do something about it so that you can change the outcome.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It's never too late, right? Because I think people probably just throw in the towel after a certain. I'm not going to learn,
Yeah.
right? They can learn and they can make a shift in their life, right? For whatever years they have left to live. That's amazing. And so, is there anything that I might have missed that you wanted to share? Like, is there any stories you want to tell us, or any additional advice, or quotes, anything at all that you want to share before we start wrapping?
I would just say that money really is something that can be a very positive thing in your life, and especially, a blessing in many households. So really utilizing your finances in the best way possible is in everyone's best interest. So find a financial coach, an advisor, a financial anything. There's so many different people in the finance
Sure.
world that could be of help. And if you have to go through, several people until you find the right match and the right person, the right personality, then do so, because that will help you get to where you need to go. Because again, like I said, it's never too late to have a different outcome in life.
One of the wise words for sure. So let me ask you this. You've been in Waystone for a while. You have a good position there. You have your own thing going. You're coaching people of different walks of life. What is something that you learned being in your field that you wish that everybody knew?
And I wish everybody knew. Um, I would say that it's something very general, but I would say that there is help for everyone. um, when it comes to trauma, regardless if it's related to money or other types of trauma, um, I think that, and I'll speak to our Latino culture. I think that
Hmm.
we go within, which is not a bad thing, but then we don't come out and go without. Go on the exterior and start looking for resources and looking for help. I think that pride sometimes has a lot to do with that as well, but there is
Shame,
help.
right?
Yes, there's
Shame.
shame. There's
Hmm.
a lot of help out there. It exists. There's agencies, nonprofits, there's coaches, mentors. There's help out there. So instead of swimming in debt and swimming in just, your known traumas, without paying any attention to, how to overcome those things,
Mm.
really look for those resources and those people out in the community that definitely can help you have a different way of seeing things.
Yeah, good advice. And I have to say, I think a basic thing is having a budget, right? But also having an accountability partner, if your spouse, your sister, or like getting a coach or somebody else. There's like I love that you said there's agencies that do this for free too. Not everybody obviously is in a place to pay someone, but I think there's plenty of help out there for those that want it. And I think that you would be surprised that one little step, like you said, acknowledging I need help, and then getting that first step is going to really be an life changing, if you will, because there's so many positive things that come from acknowledging and being aware of your needs, and then just saying, hey, I'm ready for some help, and then starting to make those changes. You could be the person that breaks that life, that money cycle, if you will, in your family, right? And that starts changing things around, and teaching others in your family what they could do as well. Wanda, this has been an amazing conversation. Where can people find you? Tell me, you have a website, social media? What do you got going on?
Yeah, so you can find me currently right now on Roses of Renewal, on all social media platforms, as well as Roses of Renewal podcast. So we have a podcast
Yes.
going on where we talk about all things trauma, and healing, as well as Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So thank
I
you.
love it. I love it. So many good tips that you'll hear. I encourage folks to listen to the podcast and start following Wanda on social media so you can see all the events that she's involved in and get involved yourself. I think it's critical to, to us to continue to grow and learn. And we do that by, being with other people that have certain, I will say, skills, right, and experiences that can help us grow as well. Thank you, Wanda, so much for being with me today. I appreciate it. And I will make sure that Wanda's information is in the show notes once this becomes part of the YouTube channel so that you can follow her as well. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.